Hey guys, welcome to day 5 of week 1, last day of week 1, as we continue in Genesis, in Mark, and we're going to hit up Psalm 148. So today we're reading Genesis 12 through 15, and then Psalm 148, and then Mark 5. So if you need to pause here to go read that, then come back and we'll get into it. So we're meeting Abram now in Genesis, and this is we've kind of switched over now from the first section of Genesis, which deals with creation and all these beginnings and all of these great, wonderful stories like Noah, the Tower of Babel, and all of that kind of stuff. And now we're getting into more of a look at the people, and this, of course, starts with Abram. And Abram is an interesting character, and we're obviously going to talk a lot about Abram in the next few sessions, because the story really starts here, and there's a lot to Abram, but really the entire Bible really goes back to Abram. Of course, we start with Noah, or start with Adam, and then we see that the fall and all the issues that are going on in the world. God wipes out the world, saves the remnant in Noah and his family, and so of course we all come from Noah and his family. But really, the story of the Bible, as far as the Israelite people, starts with Abram, and Abram, of course, who later gets renamed to Abraham. Is really, obviously, Jesus Christ is, at the pinnacle. But if we did like a Mount Rushmore of important people in the Old Testament, especially, Abram or Abraham is definitely on there. Like, there's no, yeah, he's that important to the story. So we go through, the call of Abram, where he leaves his hometown. He goes to Egypt. He hangs out with his nephew. It's really interesting. There's a couple times, and we'll see it later on too, where Abram and Sarai, they are in Egypt, and Abram tells his wife to pretend to be a sister, so that they don't get attacked, because she's very beautiful and all these things. Kind of a chicken way of doing things, right? But but we see that Abram, of course, is he does what he needs to do. But a couple of quick things that we really need to hit on. One being at the end of chapter 14, when Abram's gone and he's rescued Lot, and he's kind of conquered Sodom, and and they're returning, and they're going. He comes to Salem, which is pretty well understood to be Jerusalem. But he meets this guy, this very interesting character named Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is named as the king of Salem, and he's also a priest of God Most High. This is very important, because when we look at the kings of Israel and kings of Judah, obviously we're going generations away from the kings of that, but of Israel and Judah. But this is they call Melchizedek a priest king, which the only other person in the Bible that holds that title is Jesus. And so there's a lot of, in fact, in Hebrews, it actually they call Jesus is said to be where was it in my notes, in the order of Melchizedek. So the priestly order of Melchizedek. And as we get into later into Genesis and Exodus, or more into Exodus, I guess, we see the priestly line of the Levites, as far as in the Israelites. And so the Levites are the priests in Israel. But then we have this special order of, the order of Melchizedek, that really, from what we see in the Bible, there's really only two guys in it, Melchizedek himself and then Jesus Christ. So, and we kind of learn a little bit we don't know hardly anything about him. We get a little mention in Psalms, and then, of course, some stuff in Hebrews. But it's very interesting that Abram, after he's coming back from these battles, gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything. So Abram, perhaps the most important, the original Israelite, if you will, the father of the Israelites, he is giving a tithe, a 10% tithe to Melchizedek. So that just kind of shows the importance and how high up in the rankings, if you will, for lack of a better term, that Melchizedek is. But the most important part of all this is comes in chapter 15. And this is God's covenant with Abram. And this is where God tells Abram, of course, Abram and Sarai are elderly. Sarai is not able to have children, so they don't have any kids, and they're really kind of struggling with that. We'll start with verse 4 of chapter 15. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, this man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look toward the heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, so shall your offerings be. So Abram was set to turn over his, in his will, if you will, he was going to turn over to all of his stuff after he died to Eleazar, who was one of his servants in his house. And so, because that was the just how it worked back then. And so, because he didn't have any kids, so he was going to give all of his stuff to Eleazar, and God told him, no, you're going to give it to your son, your legitimate heir, and then you will also have more descendants than the number of the stars. And the most important thing here, and the biggest takeaway that I have for this whole section, is verse 6, where Abram responds, and he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Abram has zero evidence to believe God at this point. He doesn't have any kids. Sarai's been barren. They're old. And so what, how does he, if God tells us this now, how are we handling that? Are we believing that? It seems impossible. And, but Abram just says he believed him, and it counted it to him, and God counted it to him as righteousness. So a good blessing there for Abram. Psalm 148 is a wonderful praise. I was going to count up how many times it says the word praise in this psalm. It's just about a hymn of praise, calling on everybody to praise God. Basically all the creatures, all the mankind, praising God through his special people of Israel. And so a great just psalm on praise. So back into Mark chapter 5. Let me flip back over there. I pulled out all my bookmarks, so I don't know why I did that, but I did. So Mark chapter 5. A couple really good examples of faith in Mark chapter 5, especially towards the back. But we're going to start with Jesus healing the man with the demon. And so my family, of course, if you know my family, you know my dad is a pastor. And we found this verse. I can't even tell you when we found this verse. But I was young, and we've always kind of joked that it was our family verse, and it's Mark 5:11. And it reads, now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the nearby hillside. It is just, obviously, it's more of an inside family joke, but this plays into the more general story of Jesus healing this man with all these demons. The legion is what they called it. It does not mean, of course, that a Roman legion at the time had 6,000 soldiers. Doesn't mean he had 6,000 demons. He just had a lot. And so Jesus cast those demons into the herd of pigs. And of course, at this point, they are on the east side of the Sea of Galilee, outside of Israel proper. So what is called the Decapolis, the 10 cities. And so there's way more of a Gentile community in that area. So pigs were more of a thing, because obviously pigs in a Jewish society were not welcome and not a part of their society. So Jesus cast those demons into the pigs, and they rush off and die. And of course, this man that was saved, it is a big thing in the community, because the community knew this man that was, he was in these chains. They tried to chain him. They tried to control him. The demons just would not let him be controlled by the people. And so for Jesus to cast out those demons, it was very shocking to the local community, and again, it's just started to spread. That's kind of the whole point of the gospel, is to spread the gospel, right? To spread the story and to get it going. And then, of course, Jesus comes back into Galilee, as it says there in verse 21, when he crossed again in the boat to the other side. He comes back into Galilee, more of his home area, where he's already well known, already has a very strong following, and this story here, starting in it starts with verse 24, and a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. So there's a lot of people around him as he's walking through the streets and walking, wherever he's going. Because Jairus had come to him and had asked him to come heal his daughter. And so as he's walking to Jairus' house, this lady comes up and shows one of the most remarkable examples of faith in the Bible. Because she said it in verse 28, and this is the important part. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." Now, this is a woman that is... she's been bleeding, feminine bleeding, if you will, for 12 years. And as we look back, we haven't gotten to it, of course, but this made her unclean in Jewish society. So she would have been ostracized outside of even her family, she would have just been off on her own for these 12 years because she was considered ceremoniously unclean during her bleeding. And so she's struggled, as bad as anybody has struggled. She's been alone and just, she's not a part of society. Even her family won't, have anything to do with her. So she comes up and she says that great line, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." Her faith was so strong that she said, "I don't even need to talk to him. I don't need him to touch me. If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." And then, of course, Jesus recognizes this happens. And in verse 34, he says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." And you could just imagine her, not only physical relief, but just, the relief of being able to be recognized in society again, to be able to go to her mom and dad's house, to be, to do, just to live her life again. Just a wonderful, wonderful example of faith, just touching a piece of his clothes. And then, of course, Jesus he does get to Jairus' house, and the people tell him, don't bother him anymore. She's already dead. And I underlined this. It says, "Do not fear, only believe." And that is such a great lesson for all of us at any time in our lives. Don't fear, just believe. And of course, he saves her, and that's kind of the point. Just do not fear, only believe. So hope that's a good message for you guys today as we go into the weekend. Of course, if you go through the weekend and you want to read, take a look back on some of the stuff that we've covered this week, that's kind of the point, the whole point of taking the weekend off. Of course, follow along on Sundays and get to church. So talk to you soon.